introduction to biology. We're going to study biology this year. Bio means life, and ology is the study of. So biology is the study of life. So we're going to spend the year studying living things and what makes a living thing different from not living things, and how are all the different living things different from each other, how are they the same, and how did they all get to be here. Life arose about 3.5 billion years ago on this gorgeous planet. The first living things were single-celled, and today we have all kinds of multicellular organisms. Organisms changed over time. They evolved, so we'll do a unit on evolution. New organisms arose from older kinds of organisms. Today there are millions of different species. They inhabit almost every region of Earth today. So we're going to start out by looking at the characteristics of life. This is an ant, and it is alive, and this is a computer chip, and it is not alive. So we're going to look at what are the characteristics that make a living thing different from a non-living thing. Why is a bacterium considered alive, but a rock not? So the first thing is that living things are composed of cells. One thing you might think about here are viruses. They're a really special unit. We're actually going to cover them all by themselves because they affect living things. And they are sort of alive. They don't have all the characteristics of life, but they do have some of them. They are not composed of cells. So viruses are going to have their own special unit later on. Living things have different levels of cellular organization. So in each cell, there is DNA, for example. Each cell has ribosomes. Each cell has cytosol, the goop inside the cell. So we'll look at the different things inside cells. Living things maintain homeostasis. This is a concept that we're going to talk a lot about. So, for example, let's look at insulin levels. You eat a candy bar, and your non-insulin levels, glucose levels. You eat a candy bar, and your sugar level, your glucose level, goes up. And hopefully at that point you secrete insulin from your pancreas. Insulin is a hormone. And if you know anyone with diabetes, they either don't use their insulin well enough, or they don't make enough insulin, or their receptors aren't affected by insulin. Or there are some people who just don't make insulin at all, depending on the type of diabetes you have. So in a normal person, insulin is going to be released after you have your candy bar, and it's going to bring your blood glucose levels down. One way it does this is it converts glucose into a more complicated, a more complex type of carbohydrate. And another thing that it does is it just sends glucose into certain cells, like skeletal muscle cells that wouldn't otherwise use it. So then it's been several hours since you've eaten, and your blood sugar levels go down. And you release another hormone, glucagon. And I don't necessarily care that you remember this one, glucagon. But you should know that there's a hormone that's released. And guess what that does? Yep, it raises your blood glucose levels back up. So homeostasis means whatever goes away from a set point, you're going to bring back. So if your glucose levels go up, your body's going to bring them back down. If your glucose levels go down, your blood glucose level is going to bring them back up. Or your body's going to bring your blood glucose level back up. Living things reproduce, so they make babies. Living things adapt to their environment. Living things are dependent on other living things. That's going to be our ecology unit. Living things use energy. We all do. A rock doesn't, but every living thing does. We use ATP for that type of energy, for our energy molecule. And living things grow. So you start out littler and you get big. If you're a person, you're very little and you get bigger. If you're with lots more cells, if you're a bacterium, you start out as a little cell and you get to be a bigger cell. Living things respond to their environment. So even a planarian, a little worm, can sense light and move away from it. Plants do this. Their roots are stuck, but they can grow toward light, for example. Bacteria will even respond to their environment. So we're going to look at all of these in turn. The first one is that living things are composed of cells or made out of cells. So a cell is the basic unit of life. Don't mess this up with atom. Some students mess it up with atom sometimes. An atom is the basic unit of an element. A cell is the basic unit of a living thing. So every living thing is made out of cells. All living things or organisms are made out of and develop from cells. And I have mostly. Well, that's because Viruses don't, but viruses aren't living, so yeah, forget that. We're all made out of cells. Cells are small, and cells are highly organized. They have a cell membrane, they have ribosomes, they have DNA, they have all the things they need to be alive. They have enzymes, everything they need. There are unicellular organisms. Uni means one. So if you think of a unicycle, here's a unicycle. Oh, it's a really bad unicycle. So here's the unicycle, and here's the person that's sitting on the unicycle trying not to fall and trying to pedal. Here's a pedal, and here's another pedal, and there they are holding their hands out. Do, 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 do. Something I can never do. So uni means one, there's a unicycle. Unicellular means there's a single-celled organism. So uni is one. Some organisms are composed of only a single cell, just one cell. Colonial organisms are special. They can live alone or they can live in these groups. So they're sort of the missing link, the middle guy between unicelled organisms and multicelled organisms. They're very special. This is Volvox. These cells, these are each of these green dots is a cell. These are little baby colonies starting. Each of these cells are living together now, but they could live separately, which makes this a very kind of special organism. So other organisms, colonial organisms, are composed of many cells, but the cells can live alone if they're separated. If you put me into a blender and separate out my cells, they will each die. Bummer. Multicelled organisms. Multi means many. So this is a cross-section through a plant, maybe a root. Other organisms are composed of many cells. Multi and many both start with M's. Yay! So other organisms are composed of many cells that cannot exist alone. They're dependent on all of the other cells. So some of the cells in a tree will move water up to the top of the tree. Some will protect the outside of the tree. Some will move food through the tree. Some will just do photosynthesis. They all have special jobs and they can't live alone. In multicellular organisms, cells are different. They undergo differentiation. So that's why I was saying some of them just do photosynthesis. Some of them make a waxy outer layer to protect the cell. Some of them just move water. They all have different jobs. Living things have different levels of cellular organization. So here is a cell, for example, and this is a Golgi body, and it has a special job. And here's the nucleus with the DNA inside, and that has a special job. And here's the endoplasmic reticulum, and that has a special job. And that's a chloroplast, and that has a special job. So there are all special jobs inside of, or there are compartments inside of a complex cell like this that have special jobs. But even bacteria have a certain level of organization. So a cell is an organized unit that can survive and reproduce on its own, sort of. At least some cells do. Boy, I don't like how I wrote this. So a single-celled, like a unicelled organism, can certainly survive and reproduce on its own. In us, we actually need the other cells. So, oh, good, I'm glad I put this in. So this is true for single-celled organisms. And it's also true for your cells if they are in culture. So a certain particular medium that has all the right nutrients. Organization. So a cell takes in substances from its environment and organizes them in complex ways. That's true of a complicated cell like this. It's also true of the simple cells like bacteria. Specific cell structures called organelles carry out particular functions. So an organelle is sort of a cute little name. Sounds like an organ like your stomach, but organelles makes it cuter maybe. Anyway, each of these things inside is an organelle. So your organ, like your stomach, is made out of a lot of cells. Here's one cell, and it's made out of a lot of organelles. Here is a mitochondrion. It specializes in energy production or conversion. Here's the nucleus. It specializes in protecting your DNA. Here's a Golgi body. It specializes in making lysosomes and other vacuoles that carry stuff around and export stuff outside the cell or move it to wherever it needs to be in the cell. Levels of organization in biology. An atom is the smallest unit of an element. So don't confuse that with a cell, which is the smallest unit of life. Things like rocks are made out of elements, and they have lots of atoms in them, but they're still not living. So we'll spend some time on atoms. Here's the nucleus. Here are the electrons that spin around the nucleus, and we have a whole unit on that coming up. Here's the periodic table of the elements. You won't have to memorize any of these, but you will have to know about 6, maybe 7 or 8 of the elements. So an atom is the smallest unit of an element. A molecule is when you have two or more atoms combined. There's a water molecule. It's got two hydrogens and an oxygen. Oh, and so this is the nucleus of the oxygen. Here are the first two electrons, and so the first two electrons spin around the nucleus. And then these are the other electrons. So these belonged to the oxygen to start with. This is the hydrogen, and that's the other hydrogen, and these are their electrons, and so now those electrons spin around both. We'll talk about molecules soon. An organelle is a structure inside a cell with a specific function, and those are made out of molecules. Here's one organelle. Here's another organelle. A cell is the smallest unit of life, and so every living thing is made out of cells, but non-living things can be made out of other things. For multicelled organisms, a tissue is a group of cells and cell products with specialized functions. There are unicellular organisms that don't get this high, but you do. Goodbye for now.